Salam, peace be upon you. We begin with a woven summary of what we have certified so far in episode 14. We began with one primitive only, phi, spelled phi, pronounced phi, a mapping from events to a circle, not a substance, not a field living inside space, not time, just cyclic comparability, the permission for same, different, ahead, behind, without assuming any room called space or any river called time. We learned that only differences in phi inside licensed finite windows are publicly speakable, and every window must carry a passport. We earned local lifts when needed, used cuts only as bookkeeping, excised defects to keep domains honest, built the carrier A equals D phi tilde, reconstructed finite jets up to the ceiling n max, collapsed meaning through invariance, and certified topology tokens like winding and charge. We derived geometry only as a readout, installed stability and entity certificates, stratified scale as access regimes, sealed completeness, and formalized the escape test. Now we arrive at part 42, and this is the last lock. This is the part where we protect everything we built from the most dangerous force in the universe. Not gravity, not entropy, not quantum noise. The most dangerous force is us. Because when humans build a clean machine, we immediately want to tell a story with it. We want to say, and then. We want to say, it happens. We want to say, it evolves. We want to say, it means. And those words are not evil. They are needed. They are inevitable. But they're not allowed here. Not inside episode 14. Episode 14 is the silent layer, the compiler layer, the what is publicly readable layer. So part 42 is the boundary. It is the airlock. It is the rule that makes sure nobody can sneak a forbidden primitive into the foundation later and pretend it was always there. Let me give you an image you can hold. Imagine we have just built a house. Not a metaphorical house, a real one. Bricks, beams, wiring, plumbing. You can walk through it. You can open doors. You can turn on lights. But now there is one final task before anyone moves in. We must inspect the walls for hidden holes. We must check the windows for cracks. We must make sure nobody can crawl into the basement at night, add an extra room, and later claim, oh yes, that room was always part of the original blueprint. That's what intellectual cheating looks like. It looks like adding time later and then claiming it was always there. It looks like adding observer later and then claiming it was always necessary. It looks like adding meaning later and then claiming it was derived. So part 42 is not about building more rooms. Part 42 is about sealing the blueprint. It is the zero leak boundary. It ends episode 14 with what it outputs. And it opens episode 15 only through typed sockets, clean interfaces. So becoming can only enter if it shows its passport and uses the certified objects we already produced. That is the mandate. The house is built. The tools are on the bench. The door to the next floor exists. But we do not walk through it yet. First, we install the locks. Now let's say the mission in plain language, like we are talking to a 10-year-old who is very smart. The mission is this. Episode 14 ends with what we can certify as structure from differences. Episode 15 begins with what can happen to that structure. But episode 15 is not allowed to invent new building blocks. It must use only what episode 14 certified. So, in this part, we do three things. 1. We define exactly what episode 14 is allowed to output. 2. We define exactly what episode 14 is forbidden to include. 3. we defined the only legal way for episode 15 to start. This is what it means to have a clean handoff. In everyday life, you already know this idea. Think of baking bread. The flour, water, salt, and yeast are ingredients. The mixing is a procedure. The oven is a process. If someone serves you bread and says, it's flour and water only, but later you find sugar, butter, eggs, and spices hidden inside, you will say, you cheated. You changed the ingredients. Episode 14 is our ingredient list and our certification procedure for what ingredients exist. Episode 15 is allowed to bake, but it is not allowed to sneak in sugar and pretend it was flour. Now I want to be absolutely brutal and simple about what episode 14 outputs. Episode 14 outputs only 3 classes of things. First, certified structure objects. These are the things we spend the episode earning. They come with passports, they come with uncertainty lineage, they pass invariance stress test, they survive cross-window replication. They include things like jets up to Nmax, carriers like A equals D phi tilde, topological tokens like winding, defects, charges, linking, derived geometric readouts, invariant bases, stability radii, and entity certificates. If you hear any of those words and you feel lost, don't worry. You don't need to remember each one right now. You only need to remember the pattern. Certified structure objects are things the compiler can stamp as public. Second, refusal certificates. This is one of the most important gifts of episode 14. A refusal certificate is when we do the honest thing and say, we tried to extract that claim, but we cannot certify it under this passport and this window. It either exceeds Nmax, fails identifiability, collapses into aliasing, depends on cuts, or violates domain legality. Refusal is not weakness. Refusal is strength. Refusal is what keeps science from becoming a religion. Third, audit artifacts. Everything must be logged. Passports, masks, excisions, sealing Nmax, coherence status gamma, stress tests performed, outputs produced or refusal produced, failure classification. This is not paperwork for fun. This is the difference between public knowledge and private belief. So those are the only outputs. Now listen carefully. Episode 14 contains 0 dynamics, 0 time evolution, 0 and then, 0 story of how the universe began, 0 probabilities, 0 entropy, 0 observers, 0 meaning, 0 consciousness, 0 purpose. If you hear those inside episode 14, it is a leak. It is forbidden. It must be revoked. Now, you might ask, but why are you so strict? Isn't that too harsh? No. Because without harshness, frameworks drift. And drift is the death of rigor. Let me show you drift in a simple way. Imagine a school rule. No sweets in the classroom. Day 1, no sweets. Day 2, someone brings gum and says, it's not a sweet, it's just gum. Teacher allows it. Day 3, someone brings chocolate and says, it's not a sweet, it's just energy. Teacher laughs and allows it. Day 4, the classroom is a candy shop. The rule has evaporated. That is exactly what happens in foundations. First, someone says, just a little time parameter for convenience. Then someone says, just a little observer for measurement. Then someone says, just a little meaning because it helps explain. And soon, the foundation is no longer a foundation. It is a story. Episode 14 refuses drift. So part 42 is our strict teacher. It says, no sweets, not even gum, not even energy chocolate. Now, how do we enforce this boundary? We enforce it with gates. 3 gates. And I will say them like a bouncer at a club, because that is what this is. Episode 15 is a club called Becoming. Episode 14 is a club called Structure. And the bouncer at the door says, "Show me your passport. Show me your invitation. Show me your ID." The first gate is the zero leak boundary gate. This gate does one thing. It scans language for smuggled primitives. It takes any claim that wants to live in episode 15 and asks, "Every term you used, where did you get it?" If the term is already defined in Phi-0 language, good. If the term is new, it must be introduced only as a typed output of episode 15, not as a primitive input. And if the term is forbidden, like time as a background river or observer as a magic witness, then the gate says, "No entry." Let's do a simple example. Suppose someone comes to episode 15 and says, "Time is fundamental and flows." The zero leak gate says, "Show me the certified Phi-0 object that equals time flows." They cannot, because episode 14 never certified a flowing time. So the gate stamps the claim. Leak. Rejected. Now suppose someone comes and says, "We will define a Phi-1 token called the cadence order using omega readouts extracted from certified A equals D Phi tilde inside repeated windows. And we will test whether this order is consistent across overlap." That sounds more complex, but it's actually more honest. Because it is not smuggling time. It is proposing a construction that consumes certified outputs and produces a new typed token. The gate says, "Okay, maybe, but you still must pass the other gates." The second gate is the interface typing gate. This gate is about making every future story precise. It forces you to say, what are your inputs exactly? Not the universe, not the system, not the observer, but specific certified Phi-0 objects with passports. And what is your output exactly? Not an explanation, not a narrative, not meaning, but a type token in the language of the next layer. Episode 15 can invent new tokens, yes, but only as outputs, with definitions, with tests. So the interface gate makes you specify input types, output types, success conditions, failure conditions. Think of it like a plug. If you want to plug a device into a wall, the plug has a type. If your device has a UK plug and the wall is a US socket, you cannot just say it will fit because I believe. No. You either use an adapter or you don't plug it in. Typing is what prevents magical connections. Typing is what prevents, and then it happens, from being accepted as science. The third gate is the dependency manifest gate. This one is simple. Write down everything you are relying on. No hidden magic, no hidden assumptions, no secret tools. You must publish a manifest that says, "Here are the Phi-0 objects I consume. Here are their passports. Here are the windows. Here are the masks. Here is my allowed perturbation set if I use it. Here are the stress tests I will run. Here are the uncertainties. Here is what counts as success. Here is what counts as failure." This gate is like making someone show the ingredients list on a food product. If it contains nuts, you must say it contains nuts. If your theory contains time as primitive, you must say it contains time. And then episode 14 says, "Not in here." Now, why do we need these 3 gates? Because the greatest temptation in human thinking is to solve a hard problem by hiding the answer inside the assumptions. We say, "How does time arise?" and then we assume time. We say, "How does meaning arise?" and then we assume meaning. We say, "How does consciousness arise?" and then we assume consciousness. That is not discovery. That is a costume. Part 42 is the costume detector. It rips off costumes. Now let's state something bold. but in a way that is still purely episode 14 style. Here is the prediction of part 42. Most deep theories people propose about time, consciousness, cosmogenesis, and quantum interpretation will fail at the zero league gate. Not because they are stupid, but because they are hungry. They want to explain everything, and to explain everything, they smuggle in something. They smuggle a stage. They smuggle a witness. They smuggle a hidden hand. They smuggle the very thing they claim to derive. And this part predicts that, under audit, those theories will confess. They will collapse into one of these failure bins: aliasing error, cut dependence, domain mistyping, unjustified jet order, missing passport fields, or pure smuggling. That's not an insult, that's a cleaning procedure. Now, we also need a falsifier, because we are not writing poetry. We are writing a falsifiable compiler boundary. So, what would falsify this part 42 handoff? Here is the falsifier, said simply. If episode 15 truly needs a primitive that episode 14 should have extracted, but episode 14 cannot even name in Phi0 tokens, then our boundary is broken. That would mean episode 14 was incomplete in a deeper way than we admitted. It would mean we sealed the house, but forgot a load-bearing beam. And the only way this falsifier counts is if the thing forcing it is public, reproducible, licensed, invariant, and audited. Not a philosophical argument, not a vibe, not a thought experiment alone. A certified object, a stamped structure, something with a passport. If such an object exists and it demands a new primitive, then we must revise episode 14. That's the humility clause. Now, to make this feel real, I want to walk you through an everyday analogy across scales. First, at the human scale. Imagine you are running a business. You have inventory. You have sales. You have costs. Those are structures. Episode 14 is like your accounting system. It certifies what is true about the numbers: receipts, invoices, bank statements. Episode 15 is like your growth story. We will expand, we will hire, we will increase revenue. The zero league boundary is the rule that says you cannot tell a growth story without certified numbers. You cannot say we are profitable if the ledger says you are not. You cannot say next year we will triple revenue if you don't even have audited revenue this year. This rule is not anti-growth. It is pro-honesty. Second, at the microscopic scale. Imagine a lab that measures a new material. Episode 14 certifies the material's invariant signatures: conductivity plateaus, quantized responses, topological indices, stability radii. Episode 15 wants to tell the story. How does this response change under perturbation? What transitions are possible? The boundary says, fine, but you must use only certified invariants as inputs, and your transitions must be typed, tested, replicated. You cannot introduce mystery field X just because you got stuck. Third, at the cosmic scale. Imagine someone says, the universe began with a bang and then expanded. Episode 14 does not deny that story. Episode 14 says, not here. Show us the certified structures, the cosmic microwave background spectrum, the large-scale correlations, element abundances, each with passports and windows. Episode 15 and later atlases can model histories, but they must begin with the certified structures. The boundary prevents us from confusing a good narrative with a certified foundation. Now we must build the audit artifact. Part 42 is not complete without an artifact we can hand to future builders. So here is what we write into the ledger. we write the handoff manifest. And I will speak it like a checklist, like a pilot before takeoff. Program title: Any episode 15 attempt. Checklist: Leak scan report. Every term marked as either FI0 certified, new output token, or forbidden. Interface contract. Inputs listed as certified objects with passports. Outputs listed as typed tokens. Success and failure conditions defined. Dependency manifest. All tools, all assumptions, all passport fields required. Negative archive clause. All failures must be logged. No hiding collapse attempts. This is the artifact. And now comes the carry, the sentence you can take with you. The carry is: first compile the structure. Only then may anything happen. This carry is not just for physics. It is for life. Because most of our suffering comes from living inside stories that are not grounded in certified structure. We tell ourselves, this person hates me, without evidence. We tell ourselves, I will succeed, without checking our habits. We tell ourselves, the world is against me, without measuring reality. Episode 14 is not therapy, but the discipline applies. Structure first, story second. And when we tell stories, we must show our passports. Now we must end with the revocation clause, because episode 14 always ends with revocation conditions. Here it is. Any becoming language inside episode 14 is forbidden and invalidates the work. Any and then that pretends to be structure is revoked. Any probability talk, entropy talk, observer talk, meaning talk, cosmogenesis narrative talk, revoked. If it appears, we rewrite. That is the lock. Now I want to end this part with a final image. We stand at a door. Behind us is a finished house. A house built out of pure differences. A house where every room is certified. Every beam is audited. Every window has a passport. Every claim is either stamped or refused. In front of us is the next house. The house of becoming. The house where things happen. Where time-like order might emerge as a token. Where motion-like drift might be formalized. Where causality might be reconstructed as a certified pattern, not a primitive. Where meaning might enter later as an interface, not as a smuggled ghost. But we do not run into that house with excitement and forgetfulness. We walk through an airlock. We show our passports. We declare our inputs. We type our outputs. We log our failures. We refuse to cheat. And now, to the listener, I want to say this clearly. If you want to go deeper into the formal work behind this, you can find it on Zenodo by searching for holophase. You will find the papers. You will find the definitions. You will find the gates. But here, in this audio, we have done something else. We have built a language that says, reality does not become public because someone believes. Reality becomes public because it survives a compiler. And episode 14 is that compiler. So part 42 is complete. The boundary is installed. The guest list is written. The locks are on the windows. The house is sealed against smuggled goods. And the door to episode 15 exists, but only for those who enter honestly, carrying certified structure in their hands. Episode 14 complete. The zero-leak boundary is installed. And the story, if it is ever told, will be told on top of truth, not instead of it. Always, peace be upon you.